Fever brand is going to get as big and go as far as Caitlin Clark takes it. And I don't think Kelly Kroskoff understands that. And the latest video that is surfacing, floating around, being consumed by Fever fans across the globe, because this is an international superstar they have on their hands. This may have been the straw that broke the camel's.
The Indiana Fever front office is under fire like never before, and the storm has one epicenter: Caitlin Clark. What began as a harmless remark from team president Kelly Kroskoff has exploded into a controversy that refuses to die down. Fans are furious, players are raising their voices, and the leadership is suddenly standing on shaky ground. The breaking point? A handful of words that many saw as dismissing the influence of the league's brightest rising star. Now, with social media outrage boiling over and whispers of locker room tension, the Fever are trapped in a dangerous standoff, caught between their most powerful asset and a front office that feels completely disconnected from reality. And here's the kicker. This mess isn't just about a press comment. It's about what's happening on the hardwood, behind closed doors, and across the entire WNBA. It all traces back to one press conference where Kroskoff, when asked about the future of the franchise, compared the Fever to Apple, a brand meant to be timeless and iconic. But instead of inspiring hope, that comparison landed like a gut punch, making it sound like Caitlin Clark's impact wasn't worth the hype. By casting the franchise as the true brand and Caitlin Clark as just a small piece of it, Kelly Kroskoff struck a nerve. To many, it sounded like she was brushing off the very reason the Fever had suddenly exploded into the national spotlight. For a rookie who has brought more attention to the WNBA than anyone in recent memory, the tone felt wildly out of touch. The backlash was instant. Fans on social media didn't just call it a slip-up, they called it outright disrespect. Within hours, the clip was everywhere, fueling a storm of criticism. That night, Kroskoff's old Twitter account mysteriously vanished. No explanation, no apology, no clarification. The silence spoke louder than words. But instead of cooling the fire, it poured gasoline on it. Longtime Fever supporters, who had endured years of losing, felt betrayed. Clark's arrival had revived the franchise, sold out arenas, and made Indiana relevant again. Yet when it was time to publicly back the player responsible for that momentum, the front office flinched. No accountability, no correction, just silence and a deleted account. For fans, it was confirmation of their worst fear. Leadership didn't just underestimate Caitlin Clark, they didn't even understand her value.
Kelly Kroskoff, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. If you were perfectly fine when Fever fans were bending over, kissing your ass, applauding your decisions, you better stand here and take it when Fever fans are pissed off, upset, and are voicing their displeasures. If our voice mattered that much then, you best believe it matters that much now.
Frustration had already been simmering long before the press comment. Game after game, Caitlin Clark was taking brutal hits, and the officials barely blinked. Clear fouls went uncalled. Elbows, shoves, cheap shots, ignored as if the league's brightest rookie didn't deserve protection. So when the press remark dropped, fans didn't see it as a one-off mistake. They saw it as proof of a deeper failure. This wasn't just bad PR, it was bad leadership. And suddenly, the cracks in Indiana's foundation were visible to everyone. The breaking point came when forward Sophie Cunningham finally said what others wouldn't. On the debut episode of her new podcast, Show Me Something, she went straight for the jugular. Without naming names, she made it crystal clear. The issue wasn't just the referees or rival teams, it was inside the Indiana Fever itself. According to Sophie, some of the disrespect Clark faced came from her own locker room and the leadership above it. Her delivery wasn't emotional. It was precise, calculated, and impossible to ignore. She called out the repeated fouls Clark had endured, the silence from executives, and the absence of public support. Then she dropped the hammer. If leadership won't protect Caitlin Clark, her teammates will. And this wasn't just empty talk. Sophie reminded everyone of the night she took matters into her own hands, throwing a hard foul that got her ejected after Clark caught an elbow to the face. That wasn't just defense. That was a statement. I protect my teammates. That's what I do. With those words, Sophie Cunningham lit the fuse. Her podcast episode spread like wildfire, hailed by fans who felt she finally said what everyone else was too afraid to admit. The Indiana Fever were fumbling the biggest opportunity the franchise had seen in years. But what looked like raw, unfiltered frustration wasn't random at all. Behind the scenes, insiders revealed the episode had been recorded soon after Kroskoff's infamous Apple remark, making it less of a vent and more of a direct counterstrike. Suddenly, Cunningham's voice wasn't just one player speaking out. It was a rallying cry, a coded message that the locker room was done being silent. and it ripped open the cracks that had been forming inside the Fever for months. Reports now point to a locker room divided. One side rallying behind Caitlin Clark, demanding the organization recognize that she's the reason Indiana matters again. The other, leadership clinging stubbornly to a long-term corporate vision that sidelines Clark's stardom, at least in public. What started as a comment has now spiraled into a power struggle, one that threatens to split the Fever from the inside out.
Sustain the growth and the interest level in the franchise. I mean, this is about the Indiana Fever. Yes, we have a foundational player in Caitlin Clark and Leah Boston, and we're going to continue to add to that. But I want this team to be the leader in the country, and a brand, an enduring brand, like Apple or something. I mean, we have a real opportunity.
Cunningham's podcast wasn't just commentary; it was the first real crack in the wall. But behind the curtain, the pressure had been building for weeks. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about identity, direction, and who really controlled the future of the Indiana Fever. To fans and analysts, the message was clear. This wasn't a franchise adjusting to a rookie phenom. It was a franchise wrestling with an internal power struggle that had finally spilled into the open. And while the headlines focused on the drama off the court, what was happening on the floor only made things worse. Caitlin Clark hasn't just taken the spotlight, she's taken a beating. Elbows to the ribs, shoulder checks, hard fouls, and almost every time, silence from the officials. Not once in a while. Every game. Every week. The clearest example came on May 24th against the New York Liberty. The game was tight, the stakes high, when Natasha Cloud rammed straight into Clark. An obvious offensive foul if there ever was one. Cameras caught it. Fans saw it. Clark threw her arms out in disbelief. And the referees? Nothing. No whistle. No review. Just silence. In the NBA, a hit like that on a top rookie or franchise star would have stopped the game cold. Free throws, technicals, maybe even an ejection. But here, Clark was left standing alone, unprotected, and exposed. And the fans? They've shown up. They've sold out arenas coast to coast, cleared the shelves of Fever merchandise, and turned social media into a non-stop rally for Caitlin Clark. But now, those same fans feel betrayed, like the league and the front office are taking both them and Clark for granted. When Kelly Kroskoff compared the Fever to Apple, maybe she meant to project strength, vision, and brand power. But the timing couldn't have been worse, and the delivery was tone-deaf. Against the backdrop of Clark's explosive impact, it didn't sound inspiring. It sounded dismissive. Because here's the truth. Clark isn't just part of the brand, she is the brand. She's the reason tickets sell out, the reason the media cares, and the reason Indiana Fever has become relevant again. Why downplaying her role? The front office didn't elevate the franchise. They exposed a fracture. What they framed as long-term vision now looks like short-sighted arrogance. And that disconnect has created an identity crisis. On one side, executives clinging to their corporate playbook. On the other, players like Sophie Cunningham and millions of fans who see reality unfolding in real time. This team rises and falls with Caitlin Clark.
NFL. This is the WNBA. A star is going to take the Fever where the Fever want to go. And that star is Caitlin Clark. Kelly, you're talking about being a leading brand. You're talking about sustaining growth, sustaining the interest level in the franchise. You know how that happens? Is if Caitlin Clark stays in Indiana, is if Caitlin Clark is participating in an entertaining and exciting brand of basketball that doesn't take away and diminish her skill sets, that doesn't turn off fans that have been following her for the last 3 to 5 years.
This isn't about building a future brand. The brand already exists, and its name is Caitlin Clark. But instead of embracing it, Indiana's leadership hesitates. And in a league still fighting for relevance, hesitation doesn't look like strategy. It looks like incompetence point one by one. The signs stack up. A deleted social media account, a podcast calling out the front office, officials letting Clark get hammered with no whistles. Together, they expose a simple truth. Something is broken in Indiana. The Fever have a once-in-a-generation talent, yet instead of rallying behind her, parts of the organization seem to be keeping her at arm's length. Kroskoff's silence, Cunningham's frustration, Clark's treatment on the court. Every piece points to the same conclusion: a franchise and a league struggling to adjust to the reality in front of them. This isn't about favoritism. It's about value. Clark doesn't beg for attention. She earns it every time she steps on the floor. But the people who should be leading the charge are either staying quiet or clinging to outdated strategies. Sophie Cunningham said it best: if leadership won't act, the players will. And when teammates start publicly calling out their own front office, that's not drama, it's a warning. Right now, fans aren't just watching basketball games. They're watching a power struggle unfold in real time. And the Fever, more than anyone else, stand at a crossroads. Either they adapt and stand behind their biggest star, or they risk losing more than a season. They risk losing the very trust of the fans who made this moment possible.